How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Very excited about this conversation. This is what I like. This is what I actually live for. These type of
Hmm.
conversations, being able to, take a deep dive into a lot of these subjects, why things are the way that they are, how we can change, how we can hopefully put things in a better perspective. Yeah, I like thinking about how we can make the world a better place. I'm very much invested in that.
Well, let's start. Okay, so welcome to the Vain Tempest podcast, where I follow tempestuous ideas wherever the wind blows. Now, I came across you on the internet when I was looking for, obviously, this Nick Fuentes thing has blown up over the last since Tucker Carlson interviewed him, and I'd never watched Nick Fuentes. I took what this, everybody was saying about him, just on the face of it, basically, which is quite similar to what we've got a person over here called Tommy Robinson, and he was kind of the media and the establishment, which have spent years basically making him a toxic brand because he is such a threat to the establishment as well. And so after the Tucker thing, I thought, well, I'll go and watch him, and I found out he's not actually he's not the kind of Nazi that everybody is saying he is. I mean, he's definitely how could you say outrageous sometimes, but he's a person of his age. He's a person of his generation, and that generation has grievances that aren't being listened to. So yeah, I found your you have a YouTube channel called the OHGI Network. Okay, what does that stand for?
Right. So OG stands for Out Here Getting It. It's an acronym. And
Mm-hmm.
it was something that was born out of just the lifestyle, the culture that I've always been drawn to, that I strive to live out myself. It's just for overachievers. Whatever it is that you're doing in this world, we're out here, we're showing up, we're getting to it, we're accomplishing our goals, and then we're getting right to the next one. So that's where OG was born out of. It was just based on what we felt like we were doing in our lives. My close
Mm-hmm.
friends and I, we just sat back like, yeah, out here getting it. It's just a very smooth type of thing. And then we transitioned it over to YouTube to have a lot of the conversations that we like to have that you tune into from time to time
Yeah.
and give amazing insight.
Oh, thank you. So your friend is DK. Oh,
Yep,
BK,
BK.
BK.
So BK, he's actually a college, one of my best friends from college. And it's funny, probably in the last year, we've started to have more of these conversations that are politically based, religiously based. I've always been having that. It's something I've always been interested in. And that's kind of like where, like, I'm very intense when I'm passionate about something. So that's the type of learning that I have with it. So I'll dive into it maybe at a rate that a lot of my other friends and family aren't necessarily used to. Because if I find out something that wasn't known, or something that was presented to me in a way to manipulate me in a particular, I can't ignore that. I want to always make sense of things. It's who I've always been. So with that type of personality, I'm diving in. And now BK, he started to ask himself a lot of these very same questions. So the conversations, even what you'll see for BK, who's open about, not really been into politics. He hasn't really gotten into politics, which makes a lot of the conversation, I think, beneficial in a lot of ways, because we can kind of lower that defense where everybody has to prove that they know more than the other, and you could just have a real conversation.
Yeah, there's a few kind of similar websites I've noticed. The Renaissance Man,
Mm.
and the Carter family.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar
Yeah,
with them. We pronounce it. I think the Cartier. Yeah,
all
the
right.
the group of it's a couple of young black guys, right?
Yeah, I think there's
Yeah.
three or four brothers. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
It's funny. I saw their clips from time to time. I only was familiar with them when I asked Nick. I actually asked Nick, like, hey, is it like whose side of it is it that you're not being featured on a lot of these black podcasts? Like, why are you not being interviewed by a lot of the black people? Everybody got something to say, calling you racist. So when I asked him, he did say that they were one of the only black podcasts that reached out to him to bring him on. So I don't think it ever happened, but That's my only recollection of the Cartier family. So I guess I
Right.
would say I hold them in good regards.
Right. I see. So you know Nick.
I know I only know Nick through. It's funny. I started watching Nick maybe a few months ago, or now it's probably been close to about 4 or 5 months ago. That was my first introduction to him. I didn't know anything about him. I think somebody I watched, they were reviewing a video, and then I didn't even put two and two together as far as this is the person that they were saying that Trump had at the White House, the white supremacists. I didn't know even who they were talking to. So I had kind of a clean slate when it came to Nick Fuentes. So I just was watching him, listening to what he was saying, and certain stuff I would agree on. The majority of stuff I was actually agreeing on. Other stuff I would look at and be like, it may emotionally trigger me in a certain way. But I found myself, even with the things that were emotionally triggering me, I didn't necessarily disagree. I just didn't like, let's say, how he was saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's definitely a provocateur, and he certainly
Right.
says things. We had a movement in Britain in the 70s called punk, who did everything they possibly could to offend the older generations above them. And Nick kind of reminds me of that, but obviously without the the spiky hair and the chains and the safety pins and all that kind of thing. You know, the Sex Pistols kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
So he's kind of like a very buttoned up punk,
I can see
basically.
that. I can see
Yeah.
that.
So, like you were just saying, you talk a lot about Nick on your podcast. You actually review him. You review his podcasts on Rumble, and then you just replay them. And then at the end of that, you have a commentary.
Mhm.
So, like you said, you don't agree with everything he says, and you're sometimes triggered by the kind of inflammatory way that he says things. But I've heard you say as well, as I've been kind of like interacting with you online and the community that you have, that your message is, well, basically just understand the message, listen to the message. So yeah, is that what people are missing?
I think people are. And to finish your last question, as far as knowing him, I just got familiar with him then, and then we're in this group message because I felt, oh, he's got a group message. So for me, it was also about, how can I support him? When I started reviewing a lot of his videos, the first thing that I was doing, once I saw, like, hold up, these videos are bringing in some crazy numbers, because I wasn't used to getting this type of numbers. I didn't know who he was, so I didn't know that once I start reviewing his videos, that people will be drawn to them. So I reached out to him. I emailed him first, and the America First, his organization, his foundation that they're actually getting back off the ground. But I was like, hey, we need to figure something out. I'm getting compensated by these videos. Like, first and foremost, is that cool? And I'd also like to make sure that I'm supporting y'all in the type of way, because I'm using a lot of your footage that I don't think that it's right for you not to be allowed to have it on YouTube, but this is the situation. So let's figure out a way, I'll give you a percentage split or something. We'll figure out something that makes sense. They never responded to that. So I got in the group message with him. So then I spoke to him in that group message, and this is where we had this exchange that I'm referring to. But moving back towards your current question, as far as pertaining to Nick, let me make sure. Well, can you restate that exact? Yeah, I want to make. I don't want
What
to go
is
off
it
on any
you
more tangents.
what
Yeah.
is it you agree on with
Oh,
Nick?
yeah. So very simple. I think that when it comes to the LGBTQ community, a lot of what we describe as woke culture in America, I think it's gotten completely out of hand. I think what the Democrats and liberals have gotten very good at is turning victims, appealing to victims. So whether they're appealing to Black people, whether they're appealing to women, whether they're appealing to the LGBTQ community, they appeal to these victims, and in order to sell them a product, and the product is themselves. So they're trying to sell whatever group of victims they're speaking to that, hey, you can't accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish by yourself. Your best bet is voting for us, and then we'll take care of everything else. Don't worry about you. We'll just put all your hope and faith in us. You'll give us your votes, and then we'll solve all these problems. So what created is, when you have victims, it creates a lot of entitlement, and I don't think entitlement actually breeds success. So when it came to the Black community, I would look at how they're trying to appeal to us, calling us victims, and that mindset that I used to embrace, I realized that that's not helping me become productive. That's actually hurting me. That's creating a crutch. That's creating a handicap for me when I'm seeing the world. I don't need to rely on any Democrat that's trying to sell me on some BS that they probably don't even believe in, but they know it's not impacting them in a particular way that's negative, like it's impacting the people who embrace the victimhood. So when it comes to, them trying to empower every woman to be a CEO, or she doesn't have value, not necessarily encouraging them to be traditional. And this is something that we need to do a better job of as men and just overall culture in highlighting how amazing it is to just be a wife. See how I just did it? To just be a wife. No, to be a wife, to be a mother. You know what I mean? These are things that are amazing things. Nothing, no job, no title, no C-suite seat that you sit in is ever going to add up to that. But that's where society's taken us, because it's like everything from social programs, all these different things that a lot of the Democrats and liberals have pushed. I don't rock with them because I think that they actually hurt us more than they help us. And people will, hide behind the surface of, oh, well, it has good intentions. Well, what are the results of it? And people rarely go into that with that level of depth to even see what the results are. So when it comes to women, when it comes to us embracing all this victimhood of Black people and us feeling entitled to all these different things, them pushing the toxic masculinity that I think destroys so many families. It's probably easier to say, instead of what I agree with, Nick, it's like almost not necessarily what I disagree with, but what are the things that I know may emotionally trigger people to the point where they're not able to receive his message, because that seems to be the only time when people can paint Nick in a negative way, where they're arguing about his rhetoric rather than the substance of his argument.
Yes. Well, that is my next question. It was going to be what don't you agree with him about?
What I don't, well, and this could be, and with Nick, and now that because I've probably reviewed every single show in the last 3 to 4 months. So I've had like kind of like an intense deep dive into Nick. And when it comes to the things that I disagree on, it's kind of hard because Nick will say something today or on this show. Like he did it last week. He had a whole show where he was calling Candace Owens a black B word, going all in, using the rhetoric. But then the last 5 minutes of his show, if you listen to it, you're like, well, he's just saying like, well, I just really want people to all just get along, live in harmony. People, I'm not saying that you cut the border off for everybody, but just right now, we just got to take care of America. And everything he's saying, I'm like, well, nobody's going to hear that part. And perhaps that's on Nick. He presents it as however he presents it. I'm not giving him any advice, any of that. He's built his platform to where he can speak on whatever it is that he speaks on. But when it comes to the things that I disagree, it's more so with the strategy or with the appeal, like him using wing half, like with the white ass niggas going hard. It's like, bro, black people are not your biggest op. Like, we're not your biggest opposition. So if you're going to make a shirt, why not? If you're going to criticize somebody using a racial slur, then why don't you use the racial slur of the people that are canceling you? Like, don't just make it about black and white, because then you're getting caught up in what has always been the problem with this. They use race baiting and they use the simplest way. Oh, they're white, they're black. Okay, let's pin them against each other. That's literally what he's accusing a lot of the Jewish culture of doing. So you're feeding into it when you have a wing half shirt on, because now you're turning off a lot of black people who I think would be actually on board with your message and appreciate a lot of the aspects of it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd written that down. The wang hat. Is there anything else or
that I would disagree on? Like, let's say something like Nick saying he doesn't believe women should be in politics. I understand 100% why he's saying it. However, I still think women should be allowed to be in politics. I understand why he's saying, from his standpoint, women shouldn't be, and people like, let's say like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, doesn't make it very easy when you just walk away when the going gets tough, or just because Donald Trump now, like you'd agreed with the principles for you to stand firm on whatever came your way, whatever death threats came your way, while Donald Trump was still your homie, you know what I mean? But then when he turns his back on you, now it's not worth it, which to me, it's almost the mindset of like, now it's even more important for you to stay and do your job, not less important, because you're seeing what's going on. So I understand how Nick says it. Women are more emotional, all these different things. I understand that completely. However, I still think that women should be able to, if that's what their prerogative.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of mine. As long as women are in politics not via a DEI stream.
Right. Another
So
thing that I agree completely with on DEI, I think it's very destructive, and I think it actually causes more harm to Black people as far as the success and earning the merits in order to qualify for certain positions. I think that it actually hinders Black people, and even when you look at the results of it, like who it actually helps, it's like a running joke in America that DEI actually benefits white women the most, and Black people are down the line on that. But even from besides that point, just the fact of when you're using racism to solve racism, it's
mhm.
probably going to just like end in a place where it began at racism.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Even though
yeah,
the intent, I believe, with affirmative action, when you're coming out of Jim Crow, when you're coming out of segregation, I can understand the intent aspect initially, but we're beyond that. Like we have to adjust with the times.
yeah. So what do you think of people like Tish James and Fannie Willis and Tiffany Henyard? I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yeah, no.
Do you think they are
I think
role models for black girls who black women who want to get into politics?
no, not for. I wouldn't recommend it. And that's kind of one of the issues with the Black culture. When I look at culture and when I look at a group, I'm always result oriented. So I look at, well, what are the results of Black culture? I don't like what the results are called. So therefore, let's back into it. Let's see what's causing these results. So I think that in a lot of ways where people may say that Nick Fuentes is a reaction to a lot of things, I think that Tiffany Henyard, Letitia James, like it seems like Democrats, liberals, white liberals always want to use like a loud and aggressive Black woman to do their bidding, because once those loud and aggressive Black women are on their side, then who can be against them? You know what I mean? It almost gives you like a form of protection.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I think that they're just being used.
yeah. It's like the Deathly Hollows of politics is they have
Right,
an invisibility cloak.
right.
Um, so what does America First mean to you?
Just prioritizing America. It means the same thing that my dad taught us growing up in the household. Not that we don't care about our neighbors, but when it snows, you have to, before you start taking care of everybody else's and shoveling everybody else's driveway, you got to shovel your driveway. That
Mhm.
was the thing. Whenever I grew up in Jersey, so we got a lot of snow. More, I feel like when I was growing up than now. But my dad was always very particular. My brother and I, we wanted to go and start making money at all these other homes. No, you have to take care of home first. And then you can open up your doors to other people. No different than if my parents are putting food on the table. Like America right now has turned into welcoming everybody to the household and feeding everybody else at the expense of actually feeding the people who live in your house. So it's not anything against other people, but perhaps the best thing that we all can do to make sure that we are going to be able to interact in harmony is to make sure that we all take care of our homes, take care of the responsibilities. We're all accountable for those things. And then, of course, when somebody needs help, you're able to lend a helping hand by making sure that you are foundationally sound yourself.
Yeah. So do you agree with Nick? I mean, I can understand his position to some degree because the Jewish lobby, or certainly that side of the Conservative Party, have literally tried to destroy the man for 10 years now. And it is personal for him. He began as just a kind of like pretty middling conservative. And because they tried to destroy him, he's lived through that. Although he is saying that he's kind of like coming out of that a little bit. That they created him. But so do you agree with him that the Israeli lobby has too much influence on American politics?
100%. And anybody that I hear saying otherwise, you can almost hear it in their voice when politicians get asked that question. You could just see it. Like, we're not stupid people. You can clearly just look at situations. Like, it seems like we're now in this place in the world where people can deny what they're doing right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just accept it. It's like, nah. Like, I'm looking at you're not, the sky's blue. You can tell, you can try to convince me that it's any other color. I'm looking at it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, and this is one of the reasons why I'm super thankful for Nick. And even when I say I'm not really giving advice because I'm not in the same position that he's been in. I haven't stood on the things that he stood on and faced the type of backlash, canceling, not being able to get paid, not opening a PayPal. He was on the no-fly zone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how I would respond if I was going through those type of things. So I'm appreciative of Nick being willing to stand against something that is very clear, as far as from my perspective, on what's happening. And the fact that a lot of our politicians are too scared to address this. It's almost like, I think when we don't understand the dynamics of relationships, it can confuse us. I'll give you an example. Like when I had an agent back in my playing football days, when I had an agent, sometimes I would get it confused, like I work for my agent and getting it. No, my agent works for me. And I think with a lot of these politicians, we look at it the same way, where these politicians, they represent us, but they really work for the people that pay them money. So just like when we go on the job and we'll do things based on, hey, my job told me to do it. I got to do it. I got to put food on the table. That's what these politicians are doing. So they're not going to call out the very people that, by way, I guess how you can look at it, they employ them. Anybody who's donating to these politicians, that's their employer. When I give you money, I expect you to do something in return. So of course the politicians aren't going to be able to call this out. And that's why I'm very thankful of somebody like Nick, who's risking a lot in order to highlight these things. And you can't have an America First government, or any government, when people that are influencing it are either another country or people that prioritize another country before America. So that's how I look at it. It's very black and white for me.
Yeah. Okay. So did you watch the Piers Morgan interview?
With Nick, most of it. I think I watched all of it. Actually, I think I.
You had a mega session.
Well, oh wait, hold on. Was that the one that we reviewed for the 7-hour one? Oh, that was the one. I'm over here. I'm thinking like, hold on, was that the Piers Morgan interview? Wait, was that the one that we reviewed for? No.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It was Pearson Tucker. Oh, I'm thinking in my head, Pearson Nick.
Right. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Pearson Tucker we reviewed. So which one were you referring to? I'm sorry.
I thought it was Nick. I thought it was Pearson Nick.
No, we did the Pierce and Tucker one. I think that was the one that we did for 7 hours. But either one, and I'm sure I watched both of them, but I know I locked in on the Pearson Tucker one a bit differently than I locked in on Pierce's. And no, I'm sorry. I'm getting completely. I watch these Nick videos every single day.
No, I know. So they blend into one.
It was Pierce and Nick that we reviewed. In my head, I thought you were talking about Tucker and Nick. Absolutely.
You did Tucker today, I think.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, because Tucker and Nick we reviewed a long time ago. But last week, we sat and we did a 7-hour review of the interview between Pierce and Nick. Yep.
Yeah. So what did you think of Pierce? Did you feel it felt to me like kind of Nick was being called to the headmaster's office for a good telling off.
Yeah.
And he didn't take it seriously.
I think Pierce represents a lot of the conversations that I have with my dad and his friends and his generation. And a lot of times I think that generations don't take responsibility for the decisions that they make and the society that they create. So I'll sit down with a lot of my dad's generation, and they'll be complaining about, like, let's say, like the craziness with the LGBTQ, or the fact that there's, kids transitioning genders, or boys playing sports against women and all this stuff. And I'll sit back and I'll have a conversation with them. I'm like, y'all voted for this. Y'all voted for this. Y'all don't understand how y'all tell us to get married and to have a family. First off, we can't afford it based on a lot of the decisions that y'all made that put us in this position. You sold us on this golden ticket of going to college when the opportunities are not there. Now, they may not have known that because it was different for them growing up, but it's kind of on you to make sure that you're doing the proper due diligence to prepare your kids for the future, not just for the now. So, and also when it comes to the women, a lot of the things when Pierce and Nick are having this conversation, Pierce is completely confused about the dynamics between men and women. He does not understand how hard it is when you have a society of women. This is what it is in America. I don't know if it's in Europe, but women feel so entitled here. So entitled because they were raised by pandering fathers. If they were lucky, they had a father in their household, and they were raised by such soft, pandering, happy wife, happy life dads that they raised their daughters to be little princesses. They raised their daughters to be women that they wouldn't stand dating if they were in a position to date these women, because they didn't tell them any responsibility, didn't grow up learning, teaching them how to be wives. And it's the same thing on the men's side, but the difference is the qualities that it takes for a man to be a man and what a man's supposed to bring to the table. Life will teach you those one way or another. Mm-hmm. The things that it takes to embrace the role of being a wife, to being a woman, to being a mom, all these different things, those are not things that are necessarily just learned through life. Those are, and when it comes to a lot of the women, especially the daughters that are raised by these type of men, they grow up never being checked, never being held accountable by any man in their life, especially if they never played sports. So therefore, then they get into relationships with a guy, and you think that now the guy that's dating me is going to hold me accountable, is going to check me on certain things, just like a man has to be held accountable to the role that he has to fulfill. But if my dad never held me accountable, you think I'm going to let some guy that's trying to date me when I already feel entitled that I'm the shit, that I hold all the power in what's between my legs. So it's created a mindset that makes it very hard for us to have relationships. And Piers Morgan hasn't had to deal with that. So he's so completely out of touch. So he doesn't understand the frustration that Nick is saying. But when I hear it, I'm like, yo, I'm glad that somebody else is saying that, because in my life, I'm the only asshole that says this. I'm the guy with family and friends that brings it up while everybody else just sits back and acts like none of this is occurring. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that aspect to it. And then later on, when you go on X and you see how Piers Morgan's wife is behaving and embarrassing him, then it kind of just, it's like, oh, it's not a surprise that Piers Morgan would have this view or have issues with what Nick Fuentes is saying, teasing him because he hasn't had sex. That's one of the things that I respect the most about Nick. The fact that he's disciplined enough, because how many times have we seen a Shannon Sharp or a recent situation with the coach at Michigan losing everything that they've worked their ass off for just because they can't exercise discipline. So Pierce and I just see the world in different ways. And I realize that is a generational thing as well, with a lot of the boomers who grew up during a time where they got convinced that the world is in a great place. So therefore, now that we're seeing what we're going through with society, they don't really understand it.
Yeah.
My opinion.
No, definitely. The world was a very different place. They probably lived through the peak of it, didn't they? And we're kind of on the decline, trying to kind of stop that decline. So Piers thought Nick was racist for saying that his dad didn't want to go to Applebee's, and made a joke about that. Now, on all of the other podcasts I've looked at, the Renaissance Man and the Cartier family, they basically immediately start laughing and going, "Yep, that's right." Basically,
they said that's racist.
No, they said no. That's what we do.
Oh yeah, that's what everybody
we say. The same thing.
Look, we gotta. This is the moral high ground that so many people stand on. And I hate to always go back to the Democrats and liberals, but this is what they've made a living on, standing on this moral high ground, to the point now where they're losing people, because now people hear Nick Fuentes and we can appreciate him for being honest about the same things that everybody says. It's funny that when we were reviewing that part of the interview, my mom, she was texting me laughing, because I can remember us growing up, my brother and I, like, we used to go to this Boston market in Little Falls, New Jersey, right next to Montclair, up near Montclair State. And we used to always complain, like, yo, we got to go to Boston Market like this. We're always the only black people in there. Like, we're always the only black people in there. Same thing with Cracker Barrel, driving to Cracker Barrel down south. Even though I love the food, there was always that thing there. So it's like holding on to that. I didn't see that as something that's serious or something that everybody else doesn't do. It's just kind of how we've been brought up. And I didn't really see that as much of an issue.
Mm-hmm. So you said you're the one who introduced Nick to your family and friends. Kind of, how did that go down?
It depends on what video we're watching. But I will say this. My family and friends, and even my parents, they'll hear Nick Fuentes and they'll say he makes a whole lot of sense. And I think this is what a lot of people aren't realizing. Like, a lot of people are getting to a point where, because we see such phoniness being represented in a lot of our politicians, whether on the Democratic side or the Republican side, and with a lot of the influencers, with the mainstream media outlets, whether it's Fox News, MSNBC, or even some of the people that are still mainstream, like a Pierce and a Megyn Kelly, we're not abiding to, they still think that they're selling a product to our parents, but you're not going to you're using the same tactics to sell the product that you sold to our parents to us. And the benefit that we have is we got to see our parents use the product. So it's like, we're not with that. Like, so you can't use the same tactics. We already saw what you promised our parents. It didn't work. Now you're not going to do the same thing with us. So what we appreciate more so than anything else is just somebody who's going to be honest and genuine. You can tell me if you don't like me because I'm Black, I'd rather you just say that, and then I can move accordingly. We may even be able to have some good conversation. You know what I mean? Like, because there's an honest, genuine, where there's respect there. Where when somebody's telling me something just because they know that it appeals to me, it's almost like a guy trying to tell a girl anything to get in her pants. That's how I felt traditionally dealing with the Democrats. That's just how I've always felt.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. It's like I want to know who these people are. I want them to be able to tell me who they are. I want them to be able to be on the internet, be free with their language, tell me who they are, so that when I meet them, I can actually make the right decisions about, how I'm going to have a relationship with them. So, not having free speech is detrimental to us all. And I think Megyn Kelly recently, I think she's getting double red pilled at the minute because of the way they've turned on her for, supporting Tucker. I think it'll only be a couple of months. She'll probably be a Nick fan as well, or she'll probably be able to kind of pass the issues that he's talking about away from the hyperbole.
And this is the thing with Nick. People think of Nick as being extreme because they hear his rhetoric. But in all actuality, from a policy standpoint, Nick is extremely moderate. When he talks about he'll work with populists, and he's perfectly fine with Joe Biden doing loan forgiveness for the college students. I had an issue with that. You know what I mean? I'm like, nah, you can't. So he's very moderate in regards to those things, but people will try to paint him in a more extreme way. So that's, going back to your question, as far as when I introduce him to certain people, they will 100% like understand where he's coming from when it comes to policies. But then there may be something where it's like, oh, he said this about, I didn't like the way he said the N-word or something like that. That's why I wish he didn't. You know what I mean? I wish he didn't, because I think that he would have more of a following of people based on principles rather than the following of people, his base that he may consider his base, people that are more so drawn to the emotions of just liking Nick being willing to say the N-word, or just liking the emotional feeling that Nick provides to a lot of them, because they don't feel that somebody else has stood up for them in the way that Nick does. But what so on that end, I understand it. And you kind of can see that in him when you're watching his videos. I can tell certain things that he's saying, oh, he's trying to appeal to his base today, a little bit more so, rather than just appealing to the principles of what he's standing on.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on his mood, because he generally starts with a kind of monologue, or he has kind of a tabulation of things he's going to talk about, and then he kind of talks on his own to the camera, and then he does his super chats, and that's kind of more like when the nuance comes out, when he's in dialogue with people, isn't it? And as far as kind of pandering to his audience, it's kind of hilarious when I see him, but he's like, thank you for the $100, but fuck off.
Yeah. And it's like they want to send more money.
Yeah, it's they're paying him to insult them.
Yo, and he'll say it, and he's just like that in his group chat. Like when he always tells people, hey, sign up, you can chat with me, pay $100 a month, you'll get access to all my videos and access to this group chat. I've seen him in there. Like all he's doing is roasting people. They love him, but all he's doing is just roasting them.
But yeah, he is roasting everybody. It is very funny, and it is very entertaining. But like you say, there is the policies, when you get down to them, are not actually extreme. They're not Nazi. They're not even far right, particularly. I mean, I know certain people in the UK that find them too liberal. So where should we go now? I don't know if you want to talk more about the kind of Israel thing, because that is who's trying to cancel him, isn't it? It's the Israel lobby.
We can definitely go into detail with that. Yeah, I have absolutely no problem discussing it whatsoever.
So the question, I think the fundamental question from my perspective, is, if Israel has a right to exist, if it has a right to a homeland, then why are, white people not allowed to ask for a homeland, for a safe place, for a refuge? Christian people, or just American patriots like yourself. It doesn't have to be skin color.
I feel them 100%. And especially not only forget just staying there, but if Israel's entitled to the right to exist and their entire existence is based on America, then you can understand how a lot of white Christians like Nick would be saying, like, well, how do we not have the right to exist when the only reason you have this quote unquote right to exist is based on us risking our lives to defend it? So I totally understand from that perspective. But I guess what I would disagree with is foundationally, I never understood when people sit down and they ask these politicians that question, does Israel have the right to exist? And everybody just gets so scared and says, yes. Let me be very clear. Israel does not have the right to exist, in my opinion. I don't think any country has the right to exist, period. And if your right to exist depends on, it can only happen when you have to ethnically cleanse a particular area or commit a genocide or commit a genocide, then how can you say you have the right to exist? Like, no, we all as people have the right to exist on this planet because we're all coming from the creator, right? So based on all the scriptures, that's the right to exist. I don't subscribe to any scripture or anything else that only talks about a chosen group of people or gives priority to one group or another, because to me, that's against God. There's no way that if God's our creator, the father, and these are all his children. I didn't grow up with parents that have favorites and this and that, or treat this kid amazingly while treat this other kid, they're depriving him, not letting him eat. I didn't grow up with parents like that. My parents wanted my brother and I both to do amazingly. Now they don't necessarily treat us equal, but they're very fair. You know what I mean? So when it comes to Israel having the right to exist, what does that even mean? Like, for you to say that Israel has the right to exist, you're pretty much condoning or being complicit in a genocide. Like, there were people living there. Yeah. So America doesn't have the right to exist. If just from that standpoint. Now, did America go to war and Christopher Columbus come over to the Americas and they won the war, so they won the land? Absolutely. But as far as a right, how we use that word as if it's almost God-given, it's complete BS. It's racist. It's whatever other ism word that you can use. It's that. Because how can you sit here and say that one group of people has the right to exist? I don't subscribe to any of that. You're entitled to land from 3,000 years ago. We get so caught up in the BS of this discussion, where it's like, not only do I think nobody has the right to exist as far as a country, but the fact that you are a European in that region that we know was traditionally non-European, and you're sitting here saying that your people are what the same people, the Semites that were being discussed in the Bible. I don't subscribe to that. Now, if somebody wants to show me some evidence, then I'm always open to it and we can have a different conversation. But I just don't, for me, it's not really a big deal. I'm just looking at it. It's common sense to me.
Yeah, well, I think I would say that once a country does exist and a population exists, whatever it is, they have the right to not be exterminated, obviously. But to that degree, then so does Palestine have the right to exist, because it exists anyway. I think ethnically, there's a lot of similarity between the Arabs and the Jewish population. I think that's been kind of found genetically, even from the diaspora that came over, because there were Jews living there. They bought land before the British, whatever the British did. But yeah, so I mean, it's like either.
Like, if America, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. If somebody says America has the right to exist, that means that you're perfectly fine with colonization, people coming over here and feeling like they could rape, kill, pillage, do whatever it is to that population of people, simply because the doctrine of discovery said that you can go and conquer any piece of land where they don't already believe in Jesus. Mm-hmm. Like, how can I sit here and say that like, oh, they have the right to do those things? The scriptures, like, these people, they commit certain atrocities in the name of God, where their scriptures don't even condone them doing these things. So how can you have the right to exist when your scripture, based on the ways that you had to exist, to create your initial existence, the foundation of your existence was based on you violating God's commandments. So how would you have the right to exist? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally Judea was there, but I think the creation of Israel was probably more a political, strategic event than anything else. And my sympathy kind of sticks with just the populations there, because they're both of them are brutalized, by these political power plays. Let's see. Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people I've been talking to, obviously they call Nick a Nazi, blah blah blah, and that he wants America to be a white ethno state. Can you answer that question for him?
Absolutely, and this is why when I said earlier, I wish Nick didn't even use like the N-word rhetoric, because it allows people to mislead and manipulate a lot of Black people. Everybody uses Black people to fight whatever battle of victimhood they're embracing at that particular time. I see Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin trying to convince me that Nick Fuentes is racist and hates Black people. And it's like, bro, I'm not going for this. You're not going to convince me that you're trying to paint him as being racist. And the only thing that you're talking about is, oh, he said this about Black people. He said this about Black people. Tell me what he said about your people that makes him anti-Semitic. So let's focus on those things. Okay, he said bad things about Black people. We'll deal with that. Why do you have an issue with it? Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, you don't care about Black people. It's not like you're just standing up just because you care and are so passionate about Black people having all the rights that the chosen Jews have. So therefore, don't try to, it's almost like you're insulting my intelligence when you always present him as that, knowing that you don't care about that, and knowing that the things that you've aligned with have actually been more destructive to Black people than anything that Nick Fuentes has even touched. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's all just BS. They all just try to paint him like they always use. I noticed this when they call him a racist, they'll use certain, they'll bring up certain examples of things that he said about Black people. But then when they call him a misogynist, they'll bring up certain examples. But then when they call him anti-Semitic, I never hear these examples being used. It's always the third one. They say he's racist, he's a misogynist, he's anti-Semite. But they never bring up the examples of him being anti-Semitic. And it's because if they brought up those examples, perhaps a lot of other people would agree with it. A lot of other people would agree with it and not see it as anti-Semitic. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, it seems we've got to the point now where we were told it was legitimate to be able to criticize Israel and not be called anti-Semitic, but that's kind of gone out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point where, like, when I see our country. And these are the same bullying tactics. And this is why I think Israel and a lot of Jewish people, when I speak of Jewish people, I speak on Jewish culture. I want to be very clear on that. I'm not talking about every Jewish person, just like if somebody was critical of Black culture, saying that Black people, we commit crime, we do all this stuff, we have a huge crime problem within our inner cities. I don't do those things, but I still understand it's a cultural thing. Matter of fact, I'm more upset than anybody else is upset because that's my people. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And however you define my people now, how I define my people is not race. It's more so, it is based on people who align with my principles, morals, and values. But when I look at that type of situation, I do see it as, kind of, how can I put it? I can understand why people would. I think that everybody should police their own home. So I think the bad cops should call out the good cops, not just the people who are outside the police precinct. So I think it's on Black people to call out a lot of the things in Black culture. I do agree with that. And I think that if that was done, that would prevent a lot of the race baiting and other people calling it out when Black people call it out itself. And I already lost track of your initial question because I was getting ready to go on a tangent. So
I was just going to go, but I was going to go back actually, because if the people who think that Nick wants to create a white ethno state, that's not true either, is it?
It's not. And he said it multiple times, yes. But I do understand, which is what I said earlier, that if you listen to a lot of his stuff, especially if you're just looking at clips, if you're just looking at Nick's clips, you're going to be severely misled. But a lot of that's on him. He understands, I'm sure, that when you use performative rhetoric, that's what's going to get clipped. Not the stuff where you said that, hey, you want everybody to live in harmony. Now, if he needs to use those clips in order to get people in, I don't know what's the right answer. That's why I said if I was him, or what I would hope for is for him to tone down a lot of the rhetoric. And just now, you already got the people's attention. Now just get to the substance, get to the actual policies. I understand that you want to also appeal and entertain your base who's rocked with you for a lot longer than I've rocked with you. You know what I mean? Your base been rocking with you and paying for you, supporting you when you were 10 years getting silenced. So I understand the feel to always appeal to that particular group. However, just like as you grow, Nick, and you mature, consider that an obligation or responsibility to help your followers mature as well.
Yeah. Do you think he has a role in, as we've all been policed, certainly over the last 10 years, about what words we can say, what words we can't say? Oh, yes, that was right. Of just saying them for the sake of it, just to take away the stigma of and the ability of people, in these kind of lobbies to be able to cancel people because they've said a word, they've uttered a sound from their throats, and they're not generally not calling anybody these things in a derogatory terms. They're just saying them, as in a vernacular sense. Do you think there's a kind of there is a utility to him doing that, just kind of just slaying that sacred cow?
I think that's what he would say. I don't know exactly what are his, intentions. I don't know how much he believes in it. I think Kanye actually said this, where I don't know if Nick said it or Candace Owens said it, but I believe one of them said that Kanye, when he put out a song, I never even heard it, Hail Hitler.
Yeah.
I believe when he put out that song, Kanye was saying like, yeah, I'm gonna say this, but what it's really gonna do is like lower the intensity of how people looked at Hitler. I don't know anything about, you know what I mean? That's
so it kind of supposed to be satire, kind of.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I don't totally believe in that. What I would say, especially if I was a Jewish person, and just not even as a Jewish person, I am Jewish. I'm Christian. I'm Jewish. I'm everything. I'm Hindu. I'm Buddhism. I'm everything. So as a Jewish person, yes, I could see how that would be offensive. You know what I mean? But figure out a different way to maybe say what it is that you're trying to say. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the N-word. Like, I don't know if Nick really believes that him being a 27-year-old white guy saying the N-word or wearing a t-shirt that is an acronym that represents the N-word. I don't know if he thinks that that's actually going to help Black people get rid of the stigma around the word. I don't think so. But, and I don't think that he necessarily thinks that. But, people are going to do whatever they do. I personally try not to get too caught up in, like, I can't afford to get caught up emotionally in a lot of these arguments. Mm-hmm. Things are so bad where I can't afford my emotions to get in the way of my logic and whatever's going to put one foot in front of the other as we're trying to march towards this goal, as far as my goal. So I know everybody's goals are going to be slightly different. Nick's goals may be slightly different than mine. It depends on what podcast you listen to, I guess, to figure that out. But I do think, once again, that whether it's Nick Fuentes, whether it's Candace, I guess we can just stay on Nick. I think that what he's doing is necessary. I do think that what he's doing is necessary. Obviously, we can change the way that we go about it, but it's very funny to me how people are much more critical of Nick Fuentes than they are about Bibi Netanyahu, than some of our politicians. I always ask, how many people has Nick Fuentes led to how many deaths has he caused? Compared to a lot of these other politicians and stuff. So yes, I'm always going to be willing to entertain Nick. And especially what I use it as, this is why I felt like I needed to compensate him for something, because I'm using you. You're the vehicle that I'm using to now speak to your audience, because you and I would have never connected with each other if I wasn't making a lot of those review videos. So even though I'm appreciative of Nick from that standpoint, and matter of fact, I shouldn't say even though I'm appreciative, because I'm appreciative of Nick, I always want to make sure that I'm giving genuine and honest feedback in everything. So, whether he sees my videos or not, I've heard him say certain things where I'm like, all right, bro, maybe we're looking at some of these, but either way, it doesn't even matter. I'm putting out what I want to be put out and be judged accordingly to God or according to the energy in the universe, not by any particular person.
So is Nick right about black crime?
Absolutely. Well, in which way? Is he right about black crime being a huge problem? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Black people know that Nick Fuentes is right about black crime. The only people that will defend that are usually white liberals, not black people. Black people may be offended by the words that he's using and maybe just get emotional and say like, yo, why is he calling us out today? But every single black person is going to acknowledge that that's true. And you don't even have to look at anything or hear anything that black people are saying. All you got to do is look at what happens when black people get money, and not just athlete money, when black people get a solid job. They can't wait to move out of a lot of these neighborhoods. So it's an issue. Now, I guess the argument really goes to a point where, is this an inherent issue? Is this nurture or is this nature? Is this something that black people are being born into, this impoverished environment? This impoverished environment? Take the call. Sorry about that. This impoverished environment, or is this something that black people are just born with as far as being more violent? No. It's the position that a lot of people have been put in. So I want to figure out a way to address those factors. And I think black people should take a huge responsibility in addressing those things, and us police ourselves. Like, this should be common courtesy, common just decency. If we want to be decent human beings, who should be more upset about our young kids killing each other? Somebody who's not black or somebody who is black? So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. You used to be woke. So what
I
happened?
used to be I was never with the woke. That term has evolved. It's actually been stolen by a lot of the LGBTQ community and a lot of the Democrats and liberals.
Oh, so
Woke
you mean it?
used
You
to
mean
mean
it in the
something
original?
totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Woke used to be just, a higher level of consciousness and understanding based on what's being presented to us by society. But with all this woke stuff, and the woke stuff has really been dominated by, I mean, who does agree with woke stuff? Like, who agrees that little kids should be pushed to be transgender? If a kid is gay or if a kid is something, then there's nothing against the kid. They may be going through something mentally. I would say that that's more so a mental health thing that we should address, rather than condoning it, and not only condoning it or supporting it or being complicit, but promoting it to the other kids. I don't think that we should have drag queens reading books to kids, in the library. I don't think that we should have kids going to school and going to their library and seeing or reading how boys pleasure other boys. I don't think that we should have boys playing sports against women, or girls and men playing sports against women. This is just like common sense stuff. I don't believe that. I think parents should be obligated to tell teachers, Gavin Newsom in California, that their kids are coming to school as Brian, but they're playing Jessica in school, and the teachers don't have to tell the parents. I think that that's disgusting. I think that that's actually child abuse in a lot of ways. For not even in a lot of ways, that's child abuse.
Yeah. Well, woke seems to have been taken over by intersexual. I'll do that again and cut it. Woke seems to have been. Hang on.
No worries. We got you.
Oh God. So woke seems to have been taken over by feminists, particularly intersectional feminism. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. When I look at, for me, one of my initial turns was Black Lives Matter, and realizing and maybe Candace Owens eventually led me to this, because she did a documentary on it where she was uncovering where a lot of the money was going. You're raising all this money mainly on the backs of young black men being killed. Yes, there's a Sandra Bland. Yes, there's a lot of other black women perhaps as well. There's been multiple. I don't want to start saying names and then miss out on a bunch. But the point is that now you're giving all this money that you're raising from the pain of black people, you're giving it to these trans communities. And it's happened with George Floyd. It went from Black Lives Matter to, well, trans Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff. And this is just the reoccurring theme. Everybody wants to latch themselves onto the black struggle because they know that we are super emotional. We'll go out there and riot. We'll burn down the city, and they can attach themselves to that in order to gain leverage in a sense of, oh, I stood up with the black people. Now they're going to rock with me when it's something that I need done on my agenda. And we now are in a position where the most radical parts of each party seems to be controlling the pendulum swing, while the moderates don't have a strong enough voice to actually stand up and take a stance and prevent a lot of these radical voices from taking over and corrupting their parties.
Yeah. So, my next question was, do you believe liberals actually care about black issues? You've answered that one.
Yeah, and I'll go into depth even more. I more so look at it how Malcolm X looked at it. He compared Democrats and liberals to the foxes and Republicans to the wolf. And I'm not sure that I agree completely with well yeah, let me just explain it. And then maybe it depends on the day, I go one way or another, but I always agree with it. The foxes are the ones that are going to smile in your face, but then eventually rip you to shreds. The wolf, you know that the wolf is not your friend. The wolf is not coming around smiling, any of that. The wolf has what's on the wolf's agenda, and that's what's going to be prioritized. The fox is going to be the one that acts like your friend, and in my opinion, that's worse. I'd rather Democrats and liberals have been using Black people while delivering absolutely nothing, and perhaps it really. I was already completely shifted, but when I remember Joe Biden when he was running in the first time when he won, he announced that his number one priority was the LGBTQ community. And here I am. And then he said that comment to Charlemagne when Charlemagne was trying to ask him questions like, hey, what are you going to do for the Black community? Stop just trying to sell us on all this BS that you typically do. He said, you ain't Black unless you vote for me. And I started to think, and I'm like, damn, Black people are still going to vote for this man that's responsible for destroying more Black families than anything else in the history of our country besides slavery. And what was it? It's the crime bill. What removed more Black families from the household than the crime bill? So then when you latch that on to what Black Lives Matter was trying to do before they took down their mission statement from their website, I looked at it. I looked at the mission statement and it said to break up the nuclear family or the patriarch. And I'm like, hold up. The number one thing that these Black kids that y'all try to take advantage of and always use as leverage, especially the ones with the single mothers that y'all want to incentivize to be single mothers and not have a father in the household. These Black kids, the number one thing that they need that's going to determine their outcome in life is a Black father. And your goal is to remove the Black father from the household? So I just see the hypocrisies in a lot of this stuff. And I've never been the type that's just going to do what everybody else is doing just because, oh, that's what my mom did. That's what my dad did. That's what my friends are doing. I've never been that person. I've always asked questions and try to figure things out to formulate an opinion and a thought process of my own. That's always been very important for me.
So do you class yourself as a Republican or an independent? Or still a Democrat?
Yeah, I'm independent. I'm independent, whatever that means. I feel like that's turning into a gang too. Like it's like I'm an American. Like I'm an American at the end of the day. I'm an American who wants to embrace a common sense way of looking at politics that's based on decency, in search of truth. I think that's how we put it. But I just want to be around decent people. Like I'm just for people that understand the golden rule, treating others the way that we want to be treated. We overcomplicate this thing called life, and we end up getting in our ways, blocking a lot of our blessings, and not truly living what could be such an amazing life for all of us to live in harmony together. And I see a lot of it being torn apart by the powers that be that always want to divide and put us against each other because it's beneficial for their pockets. But they're going to have to answer to that at some point or another.
Okay. So what do you see as the most important issues in the US right now?
Fathers, bad leadership, the lack of male leadership. And it's something that, see, I can understand when women are feeling like they aren't treated well or whatever group of victims. You go through certain things where it's like, okay, you're not treating these women with respect. So naturally, they're going to lash out. It's no different than Black people or Nick Fuentes for that matter. When people aren't shown a certain level of respect, they're going to lash out and they're going to eventually be drawn to the person that actually is willing to stand against it, no matter how radical they sound. So for me, we just need leadership, benevolent leadership, some people that come in and truly understand that, okay, what's the goal here? For all of us to live in harmony. Let's bring some common sense to it. Let's bring some decency. We're not saying, let me say, I'm not saying, like, I would never sit here and say like, oh, we shouldn't allow any immigrants. Like what? How would that even make sense? Like that doesn't make any sense. However, we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure that takes care of the things here. So that way we can, be more accessible for other people that may want to come to the country. So a lot of times we look at this as if we have to, or we end up choosing the lesser of two evils consistently. And we do that for long enough. And now we're just arguing between who's the better demon that we're voting for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So do you think Republicans care about Black issues either?
I think that there's certain people in the Republican Party and there's certain people in the Democratic Party, certain people are independent that care about Black people. I think where Democrats go wrong is, and a lot of this is on Black people as well, it's almost like a relationship. People treat you how you allow them to be treated. So Black people have not demanded that Democrats deliver on a lot of the agenda items that, let's say, other groups do. So the LGBTQ, I learned from them. I'm not hating on them or anything. I'm looking at them and learning like, yo, they got, in what, a matter of 15 years, they've completely shifted things. And how did they do it? They united. They came together. They applied pressure. They used whatever leverage that they had. Now, I'm not saying that I would do it in those ways, but I do learn what works. Like I'm looking at what works and how the things that I may be raising my hand about aren't getting answered, but other people are. So it just allows me to see how things work, to see how we can best use our leverage to unite. My only thing is not uniting based on gender, not uniting based on race, but uniting based on principles, morals, and values. Because when we unite on those things, that serves as our North Compass rather than putting all of our hope and faith into a politician. You know, I'm not a fan of any politician. I'm not a fan of Nick Fuentes. I'm not a fan. That's why it's easy for me to critique him and not have to feel like emotionally like Nick's hurting me. No, I'm not a fan of any of these people. You know, I just look at it and, you know, I'm critical of some people. Now, of course, sometimes I end up liking certain people more than others, but I try to always make sure that I'm never being fanned out or a stand looking at a lot of these people because it prevents you from holding them in to a certain standard that you would hold others to and that you would hopefully hold yourself to.
Yes. I just had a few questions going through my mind.
Please.
I'm just trying to which one to pick. I'm a bit like you when I kind of lose my thread.
No, in good conversations, it happens.
I know. So it'll come back to me, but I've got written down here what that kind of Imran Kendi version of anti-racism.
Say it again. Repeat that saying.
You know, Imran Kendi, who created the anti-racism kind of motif.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that. That's a person?
Imran Kendi, yes. Let me just double check. He wrote...
because there were a couple other names that you mentioned too that I was looking at.
Imran X Kendi.
I'm not familiar.
He wrote Anti-Racist Baby. How to be an anti-racist. So
I'm assuming they're against racism.
Well, it's kind of reverse racism. I think that's what people are saying. It's kind of now you kind of, because of the struggles that Black people have gone through, there is a legitimate kind of cause to be, you know, push it back on white people. So that's it's kind of part of the woke, like that. You see that rebranded woke.
And if I could just go back to your last question real quickly and bring it to this, because I didn't want to make sure, when we play it back, I want to make sure I'm not running from any questions. I only answered on the Democratic side as far as do Democrats like Black people. I never answered as far as conservatives. I think that there's some conservatives that care about Black people. I think that there's most of the politicians. See, my beef is mostly with the politicians. Once you are in a political role, then you like automatically like, no, everybody's not going to be a Thomas Massey out here. Like you're selling yourself as a politician. Like you're working for this group. It's like you represent the people, but who do you really represent a voice for? You're just the middle person. You're not all the way on my side. You're pretty much probably going to be all the way on the people's side who are giving you money. So I think that whether it's Democrats or Republicans, some people may care about Black people or care about this group of people. But I think what I would recommend is instead of caring about any group of people, why not just care about principles, care about us as humans living in some type of harmony? And then when we approach it from that mindset, I think it'll lead us to a better place rather than people, you know, liking it. You don't have to like me, you know, you can respect me, you know what I mean? Like it's all good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I land on that.
Yeah. I mean, we have it over here as well. It's kind of, they don't even, you know, looking at the Epstein files, they don't care about anyone unless it's something that can give them leverage, basically. They don't care about women who've been sexually abused by Epstein or whoever else these people are. They don't really care about Black people. They just use it. They use it as a tool, as a leverage.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we've done that one. Have we done that one? Yeah. I've kind of on Israel, like I've since October 7th, I was of I have absolute sympathy, you know, with the victims of any kind of atrocity. There's absolutely no justification. And I'm not going to start going on a pro-Palestinian march, waving a pro-Palestinian flag and throwing bricks through Starbucks or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing. But I haven't done a 180, but I've kind of done a 140 on it. Just again, focusing not on the Jewish, people, but the culture in politics, the Jewish lobby. It seems like people are just tired of spending their tax dollars on these kinds of things. They're tired of being drawn into wars in the Middle East, just recently with Iran. And it's like Israel is meant to be kind of a vassal state of America, but increasingly, so and just look at the immune response that's come out now against Nick and against Tucker and against anybody who criticizes Israel, not criticizing, not being anti-Semitic, but just this huge immune response, which kind of tells me that they think it's dangerous. They think this is a very dangerous thing that's happening. So, and America has now become a vassal state of Israel. And the players and the politicians in America are only kind of worth what they can do for Israel rather than, what the American politicians can do for their own people.
Right. Right. I think that when it comes to Israel, and what's always funny to me, I think Israel is they are creating the most amount of anti-Semitism, far more anti-Semitism than can be created by Nick Fuentes, in my opinion. And I think that people know when they're being bullied. It's just a feeling. You know when you're being bullied. You know when a certain group of people seems to have a cultural mindset that they're better than everybody else or God's chosen them over everybody else. And that's always going to be a problem for me. Like you will never, ever, ever get me to subscribe to anything like that. Anybody who believes in that, look, a lot of people in America will allow themselves to be bullied. I can't be bullied. I won't allow myself to be bullied. I'll be broke before I'm bullied. And that's just my mindset, because I think that when you look at your purpose on this planet, I'm not trying to make any human being happy or anything like that. Outside of my parents and my brother, I'm not doing this for somebody to pat me on the back and say, hey, good job. No, this is really, I really truly feel this from a spiritual level, that we are here and that every bit of energy that I put out into this universe, it's going to go somewhere. So whether I'm putting negative or positive out, it's going to go somewhere. So when it comes to Israel, I think that Israel has been getting away with bullying, with colonizing, with manipulating a lot of us, and that we're now just to the point after October 7th where we saw a lot of the response, where we're now of age, the people who were looking at 9/11 happen and thinking like, oh yeah, of course we're going to go back to war. But then you realize like, hold up, we went to war with Iraq as a result of 9/11. And what did that have to do with Saddam? And we're starting to look into a lot of this stuff. I didn't know how Israel was created. We're not taught how Israel was created in America. In America, we may have one of the most indoctrinated educations around the world. It's very selective based on what we learn, and we are very ignorant to what's happening in the rest of the world. Very ignorant. So when I started looking into what happened on October 7th, and I actually am somebody who I'm closer, like a lot of my close acquaintances who I would spend more time with are Jewish, far more than Muslim, in a lot of ways, far more than Christians. But so perhaps that may have prevented me from maybe even looking at this stuff and calling it out earlier. But then when I started to look into it, I couldn't ignore it. I understood how when I was growing up watching the news with my parents, that I saw one group on one side with military uniforms and machine guns, and then the other group in rubble throwing rocks and hiding behind abandoned buildings and stuff. And I looked at them as the bad guys because that's just what was taught to us as far as, well, the Jewish people, that's us. Those are the good people. And the other people, no, those are the terrorists. Those are the people that are beastly, that can't live amongst each other. Like, so we grew up with this indoctrination. And what it did was, now that the people who are willing to do a deep dive, we feel so offended and taken advantage of that we were misled. And now there's a large group of us that now are trying to uncover everything. I'm not believing anything when it comes to that. Now, the danger of that is you can have a pendulum swing in a big way. And now you have, let's say, more Nazi-ish mindsets. You know, this is why I said earlier, I'm Jewish, I'm everything. So when I criticize Jewish people and Jewish culture, I'm being very specific in calling out Jewish culture. I'm not just saying Israel, because it's not just Israel. When Bibi Netanyahu gets on camera and reminds us all the time that Israel's the first Jewish state and he commits all these atrocities in the name of being the only Jewish state, why would I now only talk about Israel? No, this is a Jewish culture across the world. What did we say? Bad cops got to police the good cops. Black people, I got to police a lot of the bad stuff going on in the black communities. I got to be willing to call that stuff out. So Jewish people, there is an issue among Jewish culture, not just Israel. And I want to be very clear, my opinion on that. And I think that a lot of Jewish people, and there have been some rabbis, especially in New York, calling out what's going on between Israel and Palestine. But overall, I believe that the Jewish culture has been more so established based on such fear that everybody in the world wants to do such terrible things to you, that they embrace this level of tribalism that benefits them in a lot of ways, because they're able to unite and be successful in business and all these other dealings. But I think it creates a mindset where tribalism does to a lot of us, where we no longer align ourselves with our principles, morals, and values. We put them to the side because now it's us versus them. They're trying to take our lives so we can justify taking theirs.
It's almost like a trauma response.
Right.
You're kind of, you're dug into the bunker and everybody else is a threat.
Right.
Which to some degree it was justified. And Hamas are not a cuddly organization. They do want to destroy not just Israel, but kill all Jews as well. So
I understand you saying that. I just want to be very clear. I don't know that to be the case. I don't know that to be the case.
Well, it's in the Hamas covenant.
And there's a lot of things that are in the scripture of Jewish people and Christian people, but based on what they present to the public, they don't always align with all their scriptures. So I'll give you an example. When we look at the Torah, the Old Testament, and Bibi Netanyahu's up there referring the Palestinians to the Amalekites. Like, there's a lot of things that are said in the Bible about certain groups of people that I 100% don't agree with, 100%. But to say that, to now assign every single piece of scripture that Hamas or Muslims may align with, I think that can be dangerous. Or if we're going to do it, cool. But let's just also extend the same energy towards Christians and Jewish people as well, because there's a lot of things in their scripture that condone a lot of the things that we complain about and say are inhumane, but it says it in the scripture.
It's just the Old Testament, yeah.
In the Old Testament, correct, which is the Torah. That's the Torah.
Yeah. Well, this is the whole point of me talking to you is so that most of the people I know, most of the online people I know who are white liberal, well, they're not actually. I'm a conservative stroke independent. I'm kind of in the middle of that kind of thing. And there's a lot of people who call themselves centrists, but they're actually just liberals. They call themselves centrals so they can just, get into these groups and try to influence and push liberal policies, really. So it's just so for them to see that the Groypers or anybody who agrees with Nick Fuentes on some things, like, let's go to that video that I sent you. I sent you that video from YouTube. Do you remember?
Which one was it? Oh yeah, with the gentleman that was calling out black people for supporting.
Yeah.
He said that once you sit down with some Groypers, you'll see that they're very unimpressive.
Yeah. So actually, let me just.
So I had the pleasure of meeting some Groypers last night at an after party. And I gotta say, boy, do they suck. Like, legitimately, some of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life.
So, yes, we're talking about kind of about the division that's been,
Mhm.
pushed between black and white and all these people. So did you look at Bacon's Rebellion?
Yes. And I wasn't as familiar with it, but it happened. I went to school where it happened.
Really?
I went to William and Mary. So
Wow.
I'm not sure if you saw the comments. So Professor King, Steve and Michelle, who are in
Uh-huh.
the chat when we do the show,
Yeah.
that's my old professor from William and Mary.
Oh,
So
right.
she was
Cool.
telling us that Bacon's Castle apparently was right down the street from school, but I wasn't familiar with it until you sent it. And then I did a deeper dive. I've heard of it, but I wasn't, I couldn't have explained it at all.
No, I heard it's not taught in American schools very much at all, which,
Like I said, I've heard of it.
Mhm.
Can't tell you where I heard of it, but I never learned about it.
So just for people watching, Bacon's Rebellion, I mean, you could probably tell them more about it now, was the first codification of black and white in America, which was a conscious strategy by elites to turn black slaves and white indentured servants against each other. They gave the white indentured servants more rights, and they then removed the rights of blacks to ever be freed. They couldn't coalesce on the street together. They weren't allowed to carry arms, and then slavery from that point on descended through the female line. I think so. People were then born into slavery, and they did this after the black slaves and the white indentured servants actually grouped together and tried to overthrow the elites in that time. And they were very, very. They realized that was something that they couldn't allow to happen. So then they basically introduced the black laws. I've been thinking, because people like you and other people, that maybe this is why they're so worried about Nick, because he perhaps has the capacity to bring black and white together in a way, that something like a second Bacon's Rebellion, and that's why the immune response is just so overblown.
Yeah, I think anybody who is willing to call out the real power, because it's always like the person in power doesn't want people to know that they're in power. Like, that's how you can tell. Like, you look at somebody on Instagram, if they're showing off money, they probably don't got a lot of money. It's the person that doesn't want you to see that they have money. That's why Zuckerberg may dress the way he dresses, or Mark Cuban. They don't have the chains and all that stuff because they know that they have a lot of money. I look at it the same way as far as with what Nick is calling out. He's willing to call out the people, and the people who represent, the people who are the faces, or who represent the people in the background who are really controlling stuff. He's calling them out and saying, like, hold up, y'all are trying to divide us. Y'all have been trying to do this. You're trying to make me feel bad being a white person and playing in this race baiting game that we've been playing in for a very long time. And really, that's not the problem. The problem is you're pinning us both against each other. So I think that Nick does have that type of potential. And when you look at people in the past who have had that potential, you think of like a Fred Hampton. Unity is very powerful, especially in this type of country, even now, or this type of world with the social media influence. Somebody can easily, just like that, become bigger than the biggest politician. Nick Fuentes can become more influential than Donald Trump, because you know what? Donald Trump is not going to be in office 3 years from now.
No,
he won't be in office, and Trump will always be Trump. But I would argue that Nick Fuentes will be more influential than Donald Trump when Donald Trump's out of office, because the people in office, Donald Trump only has power because he's on top of the party right now. When Donald Trump is no longer on top of the party, the conservatives that never did like him still don't like him. They're not going to feel like they have to step in line or stand in line for him. Nick Fuentes has stood on just him, his views, and he's generated his audience based on his views, not Donald Trump, who was a celebrity and leveraged that. Nick Fuentes is just standing on his thoughts, his words, and he's using his mouth, which is a lot of times the most dangerous weapon to powerful people. People using their mouths and their influence.
Yeah, and he's done it with the full weight of the establishment trying to destroy him.
Yeah,
which is extraordinary.
Fans. Yeah, they're creating fans. They're creating people, and I think they don't realize that when you bash somebody, even look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump, when he was going through all this stuff and they now y'all doing too much against him. Like now we like, you know what? Like I kind of rock with Donald Trump. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, damn, he going against all these people. Like they treating him like I heard Nick Fuentes say, and I probably shouldn't say this, but is my BK and I always laugh about it. They treating us like some, and he used the N-word. And it's like, that's what ends up happening. Y'all start targeting a lot of these people, whether it's Nick Fuentes, whether it's Donald Trump, maybe eventually going to be Tucker Carlson, to the point where now people actually rock with them because they see all y'all trying to bully them. And now they're like, hold up, man, y'all not about to just bully somebody. Like, let's hear exactly what they're trying to say. Let's hear what they have to say. So
exactly. And it's really ironic that the people, well, again, on the right, they're not on the right. People like James Lindsay, they're liberals. They've always been liberals, are now calling, people like you, people like Fuentes, people like Tucker Carlson, the woke right, as if they are trying to shut down debate, which is what the woke does. But it's actually them. Like you say, people are just lying to your face, gaslighting you. And after 10 years of after 10 years of it, it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump, what he did was he removed a lot of the political correctness and brought some transparency to where we're able to not only see somebody's personality, which is how, you learn a lot about somebody when they put that guard down and you get to see what their true personality is. I think that opened the door perhaps for people to not feel like they have to deliver messages in such a politicized shirt and tie, or whoever's on Fox News. Donald Trump ruined a lot of that. That's fake news. Oh, shoot, that's fake news. And a lot of people who maybe hated Donald Trump, who have been thinking for a very long time, like, yo, this is BS what the news is telling me. Now they got on board with that. People who did not like that, you know what I mean? So it's funny how you see like different things may draw you to somebody and open your eyes to even entertaining what they're saying when previously you wouldn't have gotten close to it. Mm-hmm. So they're pushing people towards Nick Fuentes, and they can't stand it. They can't stand it. But at the end of the day, it goes back to what Donald Trump said when he was debating Hillary Clinton. What do you have to lose, Black people? If Democrats and liberals were truly doing things to benefit the Black community or whatever community they think they're just entitled to their vote, if they were really doing something for those people, then Nick Fuentes or Donald Trump or anybody else wouldn't be as appealing.
What did you think about Charlie Kirk? Because it seems to me that there's kind of this another biblical narrative being kind of woven around now that after Charlie was murdered, that Nick Fuentes Charlie Kirk is kind of Abel, and Nick Fuentes has been cast as Cain, and he can't, and he has to be cast out. So this is this kind of quasi-biblical narrative around that.
I think if Charlie Kirk was here to tell us what his biggest regret was, I think that it would eventually be his views on Nick Fuentes and not simply just sitting down and debating Nick Fuentes. I think Charlie Kirk is very talented. I think has a good heart from the things that I've seen. Obviously people will show clips, but just from what I've seen, I think he's a good head on his shoulders. I think he's sensible, but I think he's phony. I think he was a phony person. And when I say phony, I mean that Charlie Kirk wasn't willing to say his true thoughts. And maybe that was based on donors, and maybe that was coming out, with the conversation with Megyn Kelly. And maybe that's why certain things occurred. I don't know. But it clearly seems like Charlie Kirk didn't represent or didn't say the things that he was actually believing. He wasn't vulnerable with his audience enough to be completely transparent with them and say where his views were changing. And now it gave Bibi Netanyahu and Israel and Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin all the opportunity to paint Nick Fuentes in a particular way that I think is very unfair, or just not beneficial, because all you're doing is pushing people. Like, if you think Mark Levin standing up and saying somebody's bad, that's going to convince people to, oh, he's bad. Like, it's the opposite impact, because nobody likes Mark Levin. You know what I mean? Ben Shapiro's not a very likable person, if we're just being honest. Like, nobody's come into contact with Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and said, yo, that's a nice guy. This dude is dope. He's charismatic. That's not typically what people think about when they think about those people. So I think that I think that Charlie Kirk allowed his ego and perhaps his fear to get in the way of his principles, because all of his principles align with having debate, having open conversations, asking questions. They don't align with censoring Nick Fuentes. You'll debate all these other college kids. Why not debate Nick Fuentes? And I think that he knew that in a debate with Nick Fuentes, he could never win because it didn't align with his actual principles and morals. He can finesse it when he's talking to college kids, but in a debate with Nick Fuentes, he would have to answer for a lot of those hypocrisies and contradictions that I think he was complaining about when it came to Bibi Netanyahu. Charlie Kirk was simply telling them, hey, y'all got to do better with the propaganda. You're making my job harder. Nick Fuentes is saying something different. When I hear Nick Fuentes, I actually believe that he believes the things that he's saying a lot more than Charlie Kirk. I think Charlie Kirk was playing a role. Nick Fuentes is being himself. That's how I would look at it. And I believe this before Charlie Kirk passed. That's actually one of the most viewed reviews that I did. It was Charlie Kirk running away from Nick Fuentes from the debate. And I thought that that's what he was doing.
Yeah, he certainly was being polished into a future president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like a debate kid. Like Nick Fuentes referred to Vivek Ramaswamy this way. He said he's like one of these debate kids. That's how I kind of looked at Charlie Kirk. Like he probably grew up in debate, and I think Nick Fuentes actually had some of this upbringing as well. But he just
did, yes, he did.
Yeah. I think Charlie Kirk probably grew up in the mini government, or I forget what it was called in our school, social justice, whatever program it was, where you go to debate school.
Yeah, just the debating societies.
Yeah, so I think he was groomed like this other young kid, Brylan, or I think the new kid that they're trying to put in play. It's all it's all the same, and that's why when you listen to Nick Fuentes and you listen to Charlie Kirk, you may disagree with more stuff that Nick Fuentes is saying, but I think you appreciate Nick because he's transparent and honest in ways that you may not be feeling Charlie Kirk.
Interesting. Yes. I think we've gone through everything there. Is there anything you want to bring up or talk about?
You mentioned the other gentleman. There was a name that I was not familiar with. You mentioned him about 10 minutes ago.
Imran X. Kendi.
No, it was the one where you said he was one of the people that started off liberal Democrat and was speaking out against like critical race theory. There was, hold on, I'll look at the.
Oh, James Lindsay.
James Lindsay. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him, but based on the videos that I've seen, that's pretty much how I see things, with critical race theory.
Yeah, well, he is kind of, he's really good on that, but I think he's probably just been kind of like steeped in it too long, and it's kind of just coming out of his pores without realizing it. It's kind of,
so I only watched like a couple videos. What's his stance? He's against critical race theory, right?
Well, he's against critical race theory. He's against communism, but he's very much within that kind of like ferocious pro-Israeli lobby.
So he's a super pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't see those. I'm glad you called that out.
Well, I'm just seeing.
I don't like anything about him now. No, I'm just joking.
I'm just seeing it on Twitter. I'm just seeing it all on Twitter. Yeah. It's kind of like, this really ferocious, constant posting, which again just shows that something is up. Something they feel a threat. They feel a change in the force or something like that, and then they're on high alert. They're on DEFCON 10, trying to. That's my dog.
Yeah, no. I was gonna say perhaps a lot of this is like when you live a righteous life and you put out good energy. I don't think you look over your shoulder as much as people who do bad by people on a consistent basis. So I think that can happen on a person-to-person level. But I think it also can occur with America as a country. I think that it can occur with a culture. When I used to, sit down with a bunch of my Jewish friends and go to certain events, Shabbat, a bar mitzvah, and or when I forget what the bris, the circumcision, and I realized that they ended every discussion with something similar to "they tried to kill us and we're still here." It's a rallying call. Like that's cool, it unites people in a lot of ways. But I almost forgot where I was going with it. But I think that it also it paints you in a very limited way of seeing the world. it can shape how you see things happening throughout the world. And I forget why I initially even brought that up, but yeah, I'll just stop there. Yeah.
No, yeah. Well, do you want to tell people, where they can find you? Again, what your channel is about, what your aims are.
Absolutely. I'm all about learning and growing and having, deep conversations, or, it doesn't even have to be a deep conversation. But the main thing for me is I'm very passionate about getting society to live in harmony. I have a very interesting upbringing as far as growing up in Montclair, New Jersey, super diverse town. I look back at a lot of my class pictures in elementary school, middle school, and high school, and I realized how much of a bubble that I grew up in, where this wasn't everybody's reality. From a young age, like, everybody was diverse. We didn't see a lot of these things. We didn't see the world the way that a lot of other people grew up seeing. So I understand the benefits of what diversity can bring to the table. I used to, I probably didn't elaborate on this, but I went from being caught up in a lot of I'm only for Black. I'm a pro-Black person. That's all I'm focusing on and fixating on. So
is that kind of a Black consciousness kind of thing?
Yeah,
And
it almost was necessary at a certain point. I don't completely throw it away at all, because it was just that level of me going out of my way to learn about my history. So I may not agree with Dr. Umar on everything right now, or like a Tariq Nasheed or all these different people, but I don't agree with anybody on anything. But I do credit them and that particular period of my life in shaping me as far as being willing to go against the grain, to question things, even though these questions people don't want them to be asked, and it may lead you down some perhaps rabbit holes and some scary paths. But that's just how I prefer to live life. I don't know the whole red pill versus blue pill, but I'm choosing the truth and understanding, and I'll deal with whatever comes my way based on that, rather than the blissful ignorance. So these are what the conversations are about. These are what the conversations about. People who want to put nothing's off the table when it comes to us accomplishing our goal of just having humans live in harmony with a standard of decency, treating others the way that we want to be treated, and just moving based on that golden rule. So you can find us on the OG Network. That's on YouTube, the OHGI, which stands for Out Here Getting It Network. We also now have the Black Guy in the Corner one specifically that we're going to transition a lot of the Knicks reviews to eventually. And
is that going to be a new channel?
Yeah, so that's going to be a new channel. Probably now because we can collaborate, we'll probably still do it on both. But I don't want just the channel to be just based on like, hey, that's the channel that reviews Knicks videos. We're thankful for Nick and that he allows us to review the videos, to be totally honest with you. But yeah, I just, we want to space it out, and we want to grow this. Our goal is to have a bunch of different people sharing their views, sharing their opinions, us learning more about their culture, as many people as possible engaging on the channel as well, whatever that looks like. Whatever that looks like. So my personal Instagram is OHGI_I am. Those two words, I am, mean a lot to me. I'm sure they mean a lot to everybody else, whether we realize it or not. They always meant a lot to me. But now I just, take heed to it in a different way. And
what is that?
Oh, so I am. So
not Will I Am.
Huh? No, not Will I Am. Well, maybe I don't know. Well, actually, Will I Am probably did get the I am part from that, because I am, that's how God refers to himself. I think I forget who's asking him at this particular time. I don't want to say the word wrong person, but was it Solomon? I forget who God was making, telling, now I'm gonna sound like Ted Cruz with Tucker. But when God was responding based on, what should I call you? He responded and says, I am who I am. And that's like the whole great I am, the great I am. I got to get back to that so I can explain it a little bit better, smoother, because I don't want anybody Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz and me. But that's what that represents, just God saying I am. And to me, it doesn't represent me being God or whatever, anything else like that. That's a different conversation we'd have to elaborate on. But it just, whatever words I put after that I am, I feel like that's the blessing that God gave me, to be whatever it is that I want to put after I say I am. That's the godliness in me. So I'm appreciative of that. So whether I say I am this or I am that, I have the ability to become whatever it is that I say after those words. And largely we'll become those things that we see ourselves as, whether we know it or not. So That's why those two words are important for me. So I am, yeah.
Have you any children? Are you
No,
kind of,
no children. I
do you
really
work
would
in the
hope to have.
community at all?
Yeah, yes. We do some. We actually do a lot of work at the church. We've gotten back into the church doing some stuff there. But we've always done community efforts. Like we have our own. We actually have our own nonprofit, the OG Foundation. We've been doing this for a very long time. Like working with different soup kitchens to help the kids work on their speech, history, learn real estate through Monopoly. All this. I love people. I really do. I love people, and hopefully you and I can continue to maybe turn this into a series where we can bring you on the network as well, because these are the conversations that I think people want to have.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. Thanks, Jack. No,
Yeah,
that's
no,
great.
of course. Now you family now, whether you in it, whether you know it or not, you're stuck. Nah. but
Excellent.
but yeah, this is I look forward to learning more about you
Mhm.
and being able to interview you because I want to learn. I appreciate first and foremost, I appreciate you because a lot of times when we're doing the show, you're not able to really maybe share your perspective or who you really are unless somebody interviews you, unless you're just going to sound very egotistical and you know what I mean. But I appreciate you for doing the due diligence because even I looked at what you sent me over, like as far as you comfortable covering all these topics, and I'm like, she looked at this episode, she looked at that. So I appreciate you tremendously, and I look forward to being able to do the same for you.
Okay. Well, I'll speak to you soon,
All right, sounds
obviously.
good. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.